Okay, Chair, we are now live on YouTube. Oh, you're on mute, Councillor Holditch.
Is that better?
That's better, yeah.
Okay. I'd like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and the press who are watching this live stream of this meeting via the Council's YouTube page. Due to the government's guidance on social distancing, this meeting is being held remotely. Could I ask the Senior Democratic Officer, please, if you do a roll call of members, please? Over to you, Dan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. So, Councillor Allen.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Barkham.
I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Coles.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Dowson.
Present.
Councillor Lane.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Over.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Sanford.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Simons.
Yeah, present.
Thank you. Councillor Yazin.
Present. Thank you. Hi, Daniel.
And Councillor Yurgatini.
Hi, Daniel. Hi, all. Thank you. Present.
Thank you. And just for members in attendance, we have Nick Harding, Head of Planning, Sarah Thompson from Transport, and also Stephen Turnbull, the Planning Solicitor, in attendance.
Thank you. Okay. Any apologies for absence, Dan?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Rush, and Councillor Allen is attending a substitute, and Councillor Ali, who is speaking on one of the items this evening, is being replaced as a substitute by Councillor Yazin. Thank you.
Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or non-statutory disclosable interests? If so, please raise your virtual hand now.
No hands, Chair.
Okay. I do need to remind members, whatever their personal views on the main thing that's on this agenda tonight, is that you do have to stick to the planning rules and not on anything personal. Okay. I think it's true to say on the, apart from the minutes, but on the question of the call to prayer, the planning officer will introduce the application. The chairman, well, that's me, will invite ward councils or parish council, town council or neighbourhood representative to put their case. Members will then question the ward councils or whatever. The chairman then will then invite the objector to present their case, and members question the objector. The chairman will then invite applicants, agent or supporters to present their case. Members will question the applicants and agents and any supporters. Officers to comment, if necessary, on any matters raised during stages 2 to 7 above. Members debate the application and seek advice from officers where appropriate, and then members make a decision. Okay, that's the process, and I have been notified on Agenda Item 6.1. I have 2 speakers, and that's Councillor Answer Ali and Edward Trickett and Nazim Khan, I think. Yes. Okay. That is all the niceties out of the way. So now I'm going to move to item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of April. I mean, it's quite a way away. I was at the meeting. I'm quite happy to move them. If I could have a second. Is there anybody else?
I'm happy to second it, John.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody, any objections to that? Okay.
Can't see any hands raised. Yeah.
Okay, that's I think takes care of that. Members are being asked to approve the minutes and outcome of the subcommittee hearings that have been held. And Councillor Barkham, Coles, Over and Simons, who have sat on these subcommittee meetings, please raise your hand or your virtual hand. I've just done that, haven't I? And that's where we were. Yeah, no objections? Happy with that?
Yeah, if you just want to check with Councillor Coles, Barkham, Over or Simons if they have any objections to those minutes, because they're the ones who sat on those subcommittees.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm happy and they are an accurate reflection of our meetings.
You'll have a seconder for that then? Councillor Barkham, are you happy to second?
Sure, happy to second that.
Okay, don't see anybody against?
No, that's fine, Chair. We can move on.
Okay. So item 5 is the review of transport appeals. Members, please can I ask Sarah Thompson to present the report? Sarah, over to you, please.
Hi, thank you. So I think you're all aware under the home to school transport policy for 4 to 16 and post 16 policy, there's a 2-stage appeal process. So the first stage of the appeals is dealt with by the manager within the passenger transport team, and they provide a full response to the applicant. If the person is not happy with that response and wish to proceed to a stage 2, they then confirm they wish to proceed to that stage 2 process. So because the schools have been closed quite a lot over the last 12 months, the number of appeals for 2020-2021 has reduced understandably. So this, in the last 12 months, we've dealt with 11 appeals in total. We've had 2 of those were permitted at first stage, so we awarded transport under the first stage process, and we've had 1 appeal go to second stage, and we've got 1 appeal that's still pending, which would potentially happen this month. Out of the second stage appeal, the policy was applied correctly, and it was agreement that we would provide transport and offer a spare seat for a discretionary payment. And that summarises the total of all of the appeals for this year.
Very busy as usual.
Yeah, we have been busy, definitely.
I was thinking more of the committee. They don't normally last that long, do they? Members, have you got any questions? If so, can you please raise your virtual hand?
Can see no questions, Chair.
No, neither do I. Would somebody like to move the recommendation, please?
Yes, Chair, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
I'm happy to second that.
Councillor Simons is seconding. All in favour? Or any objections, please show. No?
No.
Good. I think probably this item might take a little longer. Okay, we're going to move on to 6 now, and this is regarding 406 Gladstone Street. Please can I ask Nick Harding to introduce the item, please?
Thank you very much, Chairman. The planning application that's before you this evening is a variation of condition application. When planning permission was first granted for the mosque, a planning condition was put on that which prevented an amplified call to prayer from taking place. And because that condition is in place, if there is a desire to have an amplified call to prayer, then a planning application has to be made to the council for a decision to be made on that application. So we have received said application, and the proposal is for loudspeakers to be placed on one of the minarets, and it's going to be tucked away. Those speakers are going to be tucked away, away from being visible. There's going to be 3 calls to prayer per day, 7 days a week, and the call to prayer will last between 3 and 5 minutes. The 3 call to prayer will be early afternoon, late afternoon, and at sunset. So that's a summary of the proposal that's before us this evening. The scheme didn't identify how loud the call to prayer would be, but instead was looking to the council to set the maximum limit that it saw as being appropriate if planning permission was going to be granted. Some councils in the country have considered similar applications and decided to grant planning permission, and others have decided not to grant planning permission. So it is a mixed outcome, so to speak. Leicester City Council has itself introduced guidance which it uses in situations where it decides planning permission is going to be granted, and that identifies maximum noise limits, hours of operation and the like. But the starting point for all applications is whether or not the principle of the proposed development is acceptable or not. So having considered the scheme, officers have concluded that the proposal would result in the introduction of a contrasting and a noise which would stand out against the general thrum of the urban background noise, and we consider that that would be detrimental to residential amenity, and therefore we are recommending refusal of the application on that basis. So if we go to the slide, please, Dan. So this is the extent of the mosque site, and the tower in question, if we just move to the pictorial, is shown with the arrow here. And this is Gladstone Street looking in a southerly direction. So it's, that particular minaret is going to have loudspeakers placed in the top, hidden from view, and there's going to be 4 of those. And as I said, it's a call to prayer 3 times a day for 7 days a week, with a maximum duration of 5 minutes. And the level of noise is to be determined by the council should it wish to grant planning permission. But as I've mentioned, the recommendation is for the refusal of planning permission. So that concludes my presentation, Chairman. Thank you.
Right. Have you any questions of the officer thus far? No. So nobody want to question Nick?
So, Chair, yeah, so if we go on to the first speaker, Chair.
Yeah. And do we, Councillor Ali? Councillor Answer Ali's the first one, I think. Ward Councillor.
Thank you very much, Chair. And good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I am the Ward Councillor for North Ward. I am very, very proud to represent this extremely diverse ward from people from all different backgrounds, generally getting on very well together with respect for different cultures, different backgrounds. The area, like many other inner city areas up and down the country, has the challenges of deprivation, congestion, etc. In terms of life expectancy, that's quite low as well in comparison to other areas. So it has those challenges. It needs a massive regeneration, and that's for another time. The mosque has been there for over 35 years. Previously, it was in a house, detached house. And then, well, I think about 21 years ago, a purpose-built mosque was built. And the first thing I want to clarify, where the head of planning mentioned that the call to prayer was restricted. The mosque at that time never applied to have the call to prayer broadcast. So I think that's a very important point to bear in mind for members. I'm a Muslim, that's my faith, but I'm not here to support this application because of my faith. I've taken the trouble of talking to a number of people who will be directly impacted living in that catchment area where the mosque is suggesting the volume will be heard. And the people I've spoken to were non-Muslims, about a dozen by telephone. And I think 2 other people whose emails I received supporting the application, Carol Payton, who's the widow of former, the late Reverend Richard Payton, lives on Lincoln Road, and she's very supportive of this application. Another gentleman lives a couple of doors away on Lincoln Road, Jonathan Theobald. He sent an email as well supporting it, and a couple of other people who said to me that they've got no objections. And I also understand in terms of the reservations that some people have. It's quite new, quite unique. For many people, it's quite exciting, but some not so exciting. And Mr. Chairman, you and I I've lived in the city for 51 years, and I've seen it grow and the wonderful diversity that it has. And for me, I think this edition will be the celebration of that diversity. Although because of the reservation that people have, I have spoken to the Mosque Management Committee at length over recent months, and they're quite prepared. They're quite prepared to work with the council to come to an arrangement, because in the Muslim faith, and the chairman will certainly confirm that as well. I'm not a scholar, but you know, we're not here to disturb anyone, disturb the peace, make people uncomfortable who are not Muslims. That is not the idea of the Islamic faith. The area that the call to prayer will be impacted upon, the residents who will be affected, that area is predominantly Muslim. As I said to you, I'm very lucky that I've got a third of my residents who are Muslim, 1/3 indigenous, and 1/3 other diverse minority communities. So I'm quite lucky. I get to see the whole world at my fingertips, different faiths and religions, people of no faith as well. Some of the objections that we have received, I've looked at them in detail, and there's one particular resident to whom I spoke to, and she's actually put about 20 or 30 of those objections basically that are listed in the comments basically of objectors. And she said to me, I mean, she's a very good lady, very nice lady, and she often sends me lots of emails with lots of casework, and I try to deal with each and every one, regardless of what their background is, to the best of my ability. And I try to deal with her casework as best as I can. And I spoke to her about this, and she, and like many other people who have objected, would have probably objected to the beautiful mosque. And she said to me that she didn't want the mosque there either. And we know what a wonderful purpose that the mosque has served, not just the Muslim community, but the whole community. And John, Mr. Chairman, you would know how helpful the mosque has been, certainly during this challenging time that we are facing at that moment. And they've always gone out of their way to work with the council and with other statutory agencies to support us as well, to work in partnership. So I think, and the other thing is that I haven't seen anything, Mr. Chairman, in the refusals that the office have given. There's anything in the council policies at the moment as they stand, which categorically tells members that now this is unacceptable. There is nothing that stands out. It is unique, it is different, and as someone has put in the comments that, and it's certainly that the ignorance of some people that it can be like rock music, that is total ignorance. I know that many members sitting in the listening at the moment have heard Muslim call to prayer. Many of you have been in mosques as well. It is a very serene sound, very soothing, spiritually uplifting. I don't know how much you are into movies. Liam Neeson was shooting his last movie in Istanbul in Turkey. And while he was there for several weeks, the media spoke to him about his experience. And he spent quite a number of minutes talking about the call to prayer. He said, the first day I heard it, I found it quite irritating. But after that, it grew on me, and I found it quite soothing, uplifting. And he's on record as saying that a non-Muslim, and he said, after that, I really wanted to listen to it. I wanted people to stop talking. I want to listen to it. So, Mr. Chairman, in the interest of the wonderful diversity and the celebration that we have and the proud of this city that we are, I ask members this evening that please not refuse this application outright. Come to an arrangement with the Mosque Management Committee, which they're quite willing to negotiate, work with us, and even give them a chance, even if it's one call to prayer on a daily basis. And I'm sure they will be amenable to that. And you can review that after 18 months, 2 years, how that's gone. And this committee, you can determine, I'm sure, that if there are lots of objectors who live in the area, who haven't responded positively to it, and if you feel that we are no longer feel that too many people are being disturbed, that it's been negatively impacted upon, and I'm sure the mosque committee will say to you, Mr. Chairman, we're just going to flick the switch down and we think that it's not working. But I'm pretty confident people living in the local area will embrace it. And I hope that you will give the Muslim community, the congregation of the mosque, an opportunity to prove themselves and come to an arrangement, the city council supporting the mosque and giving it a go. We are at the forefront at championing diversity. That's what makes me proud of living in the city for 51 years. And every minute has been a joyful moment. And I'm sure that you will do absolutely the right thing this evening and give this unique initiative the decision, a positive decision, so that we can be one of the first again in this wonderful country of ours that we are diverse and we embrace that. We're not going to let the haters and the Islamophobes and the racists win. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Ansar. Members, your chance to question Ansar Ali. Okay, Nick Sanford.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. You actually mentioned that when the original planning application was considered in 2003, that the applicants didn't actually apply to have a call for prayer, but presumably they didn't apply because they didn't feel it was required. So are you aware of what circumstances have actually altered that means that they now feel it's important?
As far as I can remember, Nazim Khan would probably elaborate on this. He was much closer to the application than I was. And I think the reason was because it was a purpose-built mosque. There was the onus on the congregation and the management committee to get the application through for the structure of the building, because at that time, that appeared a big challenge in itself. And we didn't want to compromise with anything additional to that, basically. So the structure of the mosque, the purpose-built mosque, was much more important at that time. And that's the reason, I believe.
Okay, does that answer your question? Yes.
Yes, I think I'll probably pose the same question when the applicants come to talk.
Thank you, Nick. Councillor Nigel Simons.
Yeah, Councillor Ali, did you say it's in Northwood?
Yes, it is. It is Northwood, yeah.
It wasn't when it was built, but it is now.
And if I can add, Mr. Chairman, through your permission, the two other Northwood councillors who unfortunately can't be here this evening were supportive of this application, by the way.
All right. Councillor David Ober.
Thank you, Chair. To you, Councillor Ansar Ali. Forgive me about my Arabic accents. I learned Arabic in the Gulf, so the adhan is rather the way they pronounce rather than adhan. But am I right in saying that, in fact, the adhan involves 2 calls? And so when you say there's going to be 3 calls a day, in fact, there's going to be 6?
Now, there are 5 daily prayers, David, 5 daily prayers. And the mosque feels that the other 2, the early morning prayers and the late evening prayers, will certainly, it will impact upon people because people either, they'll be asleep basically. So when we've got longer days, they're going to be quite early and quite late as well. So they've opted in their application as it stands for the 2, if I can put middle of the day prayers, early afternoon and sunset prayers and the middle of the afternoon prayer. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. What I was referring to was
earlier, they are open to negotiation, that one as well still.
Right. What I was referring to isn't that the adhan a case of two calls to prayer, one the summoning, a reminder of faith, and then the next to get into line to go into mosque. So in fact, there isn't one call to prayer, but there's two every time.
No, sorry. Yeah, okay. I could give you a demonstration, but I don't sound that good, unfortunately. But the people who actually make the call to prayer, they're very, very accomplished. Basically, they're called muezzins, basically. Yes,
Yeah.
the verses that are recited, they are repeated twice. That's what exactly. Yeah. The verses are repeated twice. Absolutely. Sorry about that. I didn't quite understand the question first time.
Okay, sorry about that. Apologies.
And then it doesn't last no longer than about 3 minutes.
No, that's right. I'll come and do the call for you if you want one day. I got used to it.
Take you up on that. Thank you, David. Yeah, I think we'll call you as the first one.
Okay, Councillor Yazzie.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Ali. In your presentation, you mentioned that you spoke to some residents from Lincoln Road. You mentioned 2 residents. Have you been able to speak to any residents that will be directly impacted by the call to prayer? So by that, I mean residents that live closer to the mosque. So, for example, Glasson Street or Harris Street. And I'm specifically talking about those residents who don't belong to the Muslim community. And if you have had the opportunity, what was the overall view and what were the opinions that you got from those residents?
Thank you very much for that question. Yes, I think I spoke to around a dozen people on the phone, and they were all from different backgrounds. None of them were Muslim. The ones who I spoke to, none of them were Muslims. When I spoke to them, they said they were quite happy to actually write an email to me, and you got that in your bundle as well, by the way, in your report, basically. I mentioned the widow of Reverend Richard Payton, Carol Payton. She's written in as well, supporting it. So as Jonathan Theobald, they live on Lincoln Road, both of them. And several other people said, really, we haven't heard it. So they didn't, say either way, to be honest with you. And there was one person, this other lady, who rang me and said that, she categorically said to me that she didn't even want the mosque there, basically. So, she's a very nice lady. I do quite a bit of casework with her, but she's entitled to her opinion. And I tried to say to her that the world has moved on since then. We live in a very diverse community. But that was her opinion. But I think what majority of the people I spoke to, they were certainly in favor, and they would, the emails I've sent you, they would certainly said they would welcome it.
Thank you.
Steve Allen.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Councillor Ali. You're certainly put forward an eloquent protagonist of the application, and your reference to Liam Neeson is interesting. I spent time in the Middle East, in Kuwait and Saudi, visiting friends. I kind of understand how Mr. Neeson came up with that understanding of the call to prayer. But what I'm thinking about is whether time has moved on and whether now there are ways not to have any noise disturbance in any neighbourhood, and the use of texts and such like. Is that not a possibility so that followers can be kept abreast of the call to prayer time, but without others in the neighbourhood needing to know?
Thank you very much. That's a very good question. In terms of how the mosque runs its affairs and how, that really is, I'm not on the management committee of the mosque. I can only tell you what the views of local residents are, what the feeling is, and quite happy to convey that to you, which I've done with the sincerest of the intentions, basically. But really, in terms of what medium the mosque wants to use, and I think when I spoke to members of the Muslim community, just to help you, we are living in a very challenging time during this pandemic, as you know, and a lot of people have said to me that, because for a number of months, as you know, the mosques were closed for worship, and people are being, excuse me, encouraged to pray at home. So when they used to hear that, if they're going to the local shop or whatever, they heard the call to prayer, they would pray, and that prayer would help us as humanity to overcome, to find the strength. Those of us who are faith, of any faith, would actually probably relate to that. Would give us that strength of character to, come together, stay positive, and hopefully we'll come through this challenging time. So it was to encourage people, basically, so people get that encouragement. But what the mosque medium decides to use, it's up to them. But I certainly feel, because from not just as a councillor, I honestly believe that people will embrace it. And again, I will stress, let's give it a chance. Councillor Allen, I know and you know better than me. You've lived amongst diverse communities yourself, not far from the mosque, and you know that how we all work together. Muslim community works together, and now I know that, and John knows everyone better than any of us, basically. And if John said to them, or whoever his successor is going to be, that look, it's not working, we're getting too much disturbance, too much people that feel annoyed and whatever can you switch that off, please? And I'm telling you, the mosque committee would listen to you, because they always listen to the authorities and they work with us. Thank you.
Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Councillor Ali, and thank you, Councillor Ali, for your presentation. Could you just clarify for me which prayers you mean? It's Dur, Asr and Maghrib, is that right?
Yeah, from Zohar, Asr and Maghrib. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, you said it better than I did.
I didn't want to get confused with Isra, so I'm happy that it's not Isha, because of course that's quite late and it can be during the winter months. My other question is, although I visited the mosque and I know some of the mosque community, I'm not sure how far the community stretch within Peterborough. I wonder if you could tell me how far the congregation stretches across the city.
Thank you. No, in terms of, we've got about 23,000 Muslims in this beautiful city of Peterborough, a very large Muslim community. And we've got Muslim community all over the city, basically. The mosque is proposing to the sound only to be projected. I think, you had a picture, a graph of that, where it's Lincoln Road on the east of side, basically, and the west Booges Boulevard, and I think equal distance. And in that area, it's really predominantly the households are Muslim, basically.
I was just wondering, because obviously I live in West Town, I was wondering whether the residents here who might come will be able to hear it.
Yeah, no, thank you, Councillor Cole. If I can just add, no, they won't. And I can tell you that maybe there was a group of people who came into Peterborough, some Islamophobic group, which Councillor Shazia Bashir intercepted. They were actually distributing leaflets, antagonizing people to object. And a lot of the objectors came as a result of that. And these people came outside of Peterborough. They paid a group of young people to go and deliver these leaflets to encourage them to object, basically. So I hasten to add that a lot of the objections came through encouragement by distributing leaflets in the west of the city, where the projected sound will not go as far.
I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Councillor Barkham.
Thank you, Chair, and to Councillor Ali. Hi, thank you for your presentation. Just quickly, so the proposal presently is 3 times per day and not the early morning and not too late in the evening. There is guidance put by Leicester to have it not after 8 PM, not before a certain time in the morning. Is that open to any form of compromise, if that was indeed possible, to either reduce it to a lower number per day, or maybe have it at particular times of the Islamic calendar, an important date, rather than every day?
Yeah, I think, I mean, thank you very much. And that's an excellent question. Really, I mean, what I'm urging members, let's work with the Mosque Management Committee. Let's give it a go. Maybe start small. And if people are embracing it, then grow it bigger. Once a day, every day, and then say that we'll see at other times. Yeah, it really, I'm sure that, I know Nazim Khan, who's the chairman of the Mosque Committee, who's there as well. They will be happy to, because of the investment that goes in setting the thing up, basically, we'll need to give it, 18 months to 2 years for people to, get used to it. And then we can review it again, basically. So short answer to your question, I'm absolutely sure, because that's what's wonderful about this city of Peterborough, that our mosque committees work very well together with the statutory agencies. They always listen to us, and I think this is an opportunity for us to show them, okay, we'll give you guys a go, and we'll see what happens, basically. So I think, please, negotiate with them, let our officers work with them, and I'm sure that we can come to, as we have done in the past, over the past 50, 60 years, we've always managed to work things through, and I'm sure this time we will as well.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't have any further people question, but I'd just like to clarify a couple of points. If you're going to do it at sunset, that could be 10 o'clock, after 10 o'clock on a summer's night. And the other point that Councillor Allen put to you, there are mosques, I'm told, because I've done a bit of research on it, that do use technology either through the telly or the radio or through their phones to call people to prayer. Is that not right?
Yeah. I mean, I think people do different methods, however they would choose to do that. So yeah, there are opportunities for people to investigate what else they could do to get the message across to members of their congregations. Basically, yes, there are. Sorry, I lost your first question. Did you ask me?
With the sunset call?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. No, I think the latest is in the height of summer. Again, I have probably the sunset is around 9:30. In the height is the longest day, I think, around that sort of time. Yeah.
Okay. Dick Sanford, do you want to come back?
Yeah, just very briefly, just on that point that you made, Mr. Chairman. I thought this would be a pertinent point, so I actually looked it up before the meeting. In Cambridge, which is the nearest I could find to Peterborough, the latest time of sunset is actually 9:20.
Oh.
Okay. Okay,
it's around that sort of time, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution, Councillor Ali. Nice to see you again, mate. And the next person I have is an objector, and that's Edward Cricket. Edward.
Good evening, everyone. I thank you for this opportunity to speak regarding a variation submitted. The reference has already been cited, and it's in relation to the application that's already been cited. The application for variation was submitted the 3rd of September 2020 and validated the 25th of October 2020. In this country, we have a diverse population, and so we as individuals and as communities must work together to promote equality and diversity for everyone. Therefore, I feel it is incumbent upon me to speak out about the proposed amendment to an already established and agreed upon planning application regarding Majlis Guzia and the associated Jamia Guzia. Prior to my main arguments, I wish to briefly outline the property's history, because I'm not from the area. I'm actually from up in the northwest. I'm from a place called Hapton, which is near Burnley. But I've read about this and I've looked into it. There was a number of applications totaling over 20 separate that have already been requested and accepted by Peterborough Council, dating back to 1998, such as provision for the existing mosque to be extended and multiple subsequent alterations to the mosque in the property's relatively short history since it was extended. I make reference to this because it demonstrates that the council has been accommodating to the submissions made by the mosque, and therefore it is fair to say that the council has facilitated the Muslim population of Peterborough in their religious practices and hasn't been a hindrance. Therefore, any accusations of discrimination should be dispelled immediately. The matter at hand is regarding an amendment to a planning application, which has already been cited. The application was originally received on the 13th of October 2003 and was decided on the 15th of December 2003. The decision agreed by the proposals by the Makazi Jamia Mosque Guzia Committee, which were to allow for a substantial extension of an existing mosque. The decision was agreed upon with a number of conditions on the planning application. However, namely C8, which I quote, and I quote it verbatim, there shall be no amplified music or voices projected from the building, and R8, which is the reason, is in the interest of residential amenity. The council had already made a decision regarding a practice widely known about within Islam, namely the Adhan. I know there's other pronunciations of the Adhan, such as Azan, but I'm calling it the Adhan. The Adhan is highly revered within Islam. They literally regard it as the voice of God itself, and therefore I understand the importance of such a practice, even though I am not religious myself. My main points are as such. The Adhan being played through an amplified system with properties in proximity to the mosque, whereby residents may not be from that faith, is untenable, and this is chiefly due to the noise generated by such a practice. Upon reviewing the associated paperwork regarding this variation request, I have counted all public comments made that were recorded on the council's website. There have been 78 objections, totaling 63.4%, constituting a majority of the community objecting to the Adhan being publicly broadcast as per the originally agreed upon planning application. Since the mosque has been used in its current form for almost 20 years now, I appreciate the previous councillor saying the mosque has existed for a lot longer, but its current form since it was extended for almost 20 years now, the Adhan hasn't been used in public broadcast without issue. The preclusion of public broadcasting of the Adhan hasn't negatively affected the religious practices or beliefs of the Islamic community that use the mosque. There is already technology and provisions in place, and other councillors have also commented about this regarding the Adhan and its relevance to the practice of Islam. These include Majlis radios, apps, the TV, alarms, and the Islamic community itself, as people car share or attend the mosque together. So therefore the Muslim population almost self-regulate themselves in that respect. Therefore, a public broadcasting of the Adhan is simply not necessary. There is no reference regarding provision of volume control. I appreciate this is something that the council would look at further if the appeal was...
30 seconds left.
Pardon?
That's 30 seconds left to speak.
Okay, thank you. The noise generated by 4 loudspeakers positioned high up on a minaret will project the Adhan a considerable distance and will be audible to people who have already lodged their objection to the Adhan being public. There is legitimate concern that if mosques in any given locale are granted permission to have the Adhan publicly, this will have a cascading effect within the community and the UK as a whole. A cursory search of Peterborough and listed mosques shows that there are around 9 such properties listed as a mosque or Islamic centre, all within approximately 1 mile radius of the mosque. And if the mosque was granted permission, it could mean that other mosques in the area and across the UK as a whole could also ask for the Adhan to be public.
Sorry
and
to
this
interrupt, that's time.
Oh.
Thank you, Edward.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, questions to Edward, please. Members. No, I don't see anybody wishing to speak.
Councillor Coles.
Oh, Councillor Coles, yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you very much for your presentation. Mr. Trickett. It's very interesting to hear the views that you express. I didn't quite understand. Are you a local resident, or do you currently live in the Northwest? I may have misunderstood what you were saying.
No, I'm not from the area. I live in. I've always lived away from Peterborough, but I picked up on the news article and felt it was necessary to make an objection regarding the fact that I feel that it's not necessary for the practice as for the reasons I've already stated, and I felt it was necessary for me to voice my concerns regarding it.
Thanks very much. And I also note that you enumerated the number of positive versus negative comments about the application, and as you say quite rightly, 60-odd% were opposed to those that were in favour. What has sort of informed your view about why it would be damaging to Peterborough?
It's regarding it's chiefly down to noise pollution, but also down to, as I pointed out at the very beginning, that we live in a diverse community. There is a wide variety of religious creeds, racial backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, beliefs and opinions as a whole. And equality and diversity is not about one side overcoming another. It's about meeting in the middle and having a suitable compromise moving forward. And given the fact that the Adhan is not necessary, it's simply not necessary in public form, there is other methods that can be used that means that the Muslim population can still practice their religion and that it doesn't impact on other people. that should chiefly be the reason why this appeal should not go ahead, and that the original decision by the council should be upheld, that the Adhan should not be allowed to be public broadcast from that mosque, or any mosque in Peterborough for that matter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Sanford?
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point that Mr. Trickett's put quite a lot of emphasis on the fact that a larger number of people were opposed as to being in favour, but that's not something that we're concerned with, because we're looking at the planning ground, not the numbers of people on sort of either side. But the question I wanted to ask really is, how can you be so sure that if the call to prayer were to be broadcast, that it would cause undue disturbance to local people? Because I think there are other places in the country where these calls to prayer are broadcast. So what do you think of the idea that Councillor Ali put forward, that it would be an idea to trial it for a period?
I feel it could be like opening the floodgates, if you will. You allow it to be trialled. I don't know how amenable the committee is. I'm not from. I don't work all them. However, such a proposition. However, I feel that it could be a case where people feel, oh well, it's happened now and that's it, and there's nothing they can do about it. So they may not object to it because they may not be aware there is such an option to do so. They may feel it's something that they have to just put up with because it's happened, and therefore the process then goes on that, for example, if it is once a day, then the committee could say, well, can we have it twice a day? Can we have it 3 times a day? And if enough mosques in the country then go ahead and have the calls at 3 times a day, there could be a call for noise litigation as a whole. The actual legislation regarding noise abatement, full stop, could be looked at. And then we could be looking at 5 times a day, because the Muslim population feels it's incumbent upon them because of how important that particular part of their religion is. I fully accept how important the Adhan is to the Muslim population, but for other people, it's not. It's not. It's a disturbance, and I have genuine concerns that 20, 30, 40 years from now, that could be something that we are looking at. And by then it's too late. By then it's been put in place. Enough of these mosques are having this Adhan. However long they're having it, they could be having up to 5 times a day by that time, and by then it's too late. It's already been changed by law, and by then it's too late. We have no recourse.
Thank you, Edward. I think you managed to finish off your speech quite nicely with that.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to move on now. I'm going to invite Mohammed Iqbal and Nazim Khan to address the committee. You will have 5 minutes in which to address the committee. The Democratic Services Officer will let you know when you have 30 seconds to go. Okay, so who's going to go first? Hello? Nazim, are you still there?
Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, yes.
If you allow me, I'll go first.
You and Mohammed Iqbal have got 5 minutes between you, okay?
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and members. I'll be very brief, like Mr. Harding. I've been here before, but I'll pick up a couple of points, Chair, if you allow me. The proposal, the recommendation by the officers, in the absence of city councils having no policy on this particular issue, you have 2 officers' recommendation. One is from Mr. Harding, and the other one is from the pollution team. Pollution team is saying it could be accommodated with some conditions and so on and so forth, and the officers in charge is saying refuse it. I was a bit disappointed because Mr. Harding could have actually put in his recommendation, 1A, you can refuse, B is that you can go along with the pollution team recommendation. But this noise level that we're talking about, I think that's probably a bit of a red herring, Chairman, because it's got nothing to do with this policy. This noise level that we are discussing, or the officers are saying, is totally different to what the call for prayer will be, that we are asking for. Now, Chairman, in the absence of a policy, what do you do? We say you give us the trial period so we can test it. Your officers are saying no, and they are assuming that it will be a detrimental effect on the kind of local community. There were no evidence, neither do we have evidence that it will not have the detrimental effect. So I think, Chairman, if you allow me, the middle ground is that, go for a trial, right? And we'll all see. If it works well and good. And if it doesn't, I'll be probably the first person, along with the officers, will say, look, we've given it a try and it's not working. People are not happy and we can't convince our next door neighbors and so on and so forth. And we will kind of stop it. But to say that, that this will, lead to this and that will lead to that, that will lead to that, I think it's assumptions. No, Chair, you've been in that chair for a long time, and you've been in the council for a long time. We wouldn't have built the prison if we listened to the people who are objecting. But we had to make a decision, and that nobody's talking about prison now. But when that planning application was in, everybody was saying, we will have sort of prisoners escaping to the city center. We will have, house prices will go down. Nobody will buy those houses. House prices have gone up in that area, So on the other hand, I've been around as well. And I can tell you, and you were there as well, when these mosques were first built, there were people objecting. And I can understand people's fear. We live in this country. Anything that new that somebody asks for, people have reservation. How is it going to be? But you can't sort of assume that this will have a dental, effect on it. So my, Chairman, if you allow me, recommendation or suggestion to yourself would be, give us a trial period, maybe once a day, maybe twice a day. I'll leave that in your good discretion. Give us a trial period and let's work together. We will sit down with the officers and we will we'll work with them to check the noise level. Now, first few days, it may sound that it's probably too high. On the other hand, it might go the other way. So, we will have a kind of ups and downs. But please, give us a trial period. Just don't dismiss it outright. And let's work together and see how it works. Because I am absolutely certain that, that it will, I feel that I think.
Sorry to interrupt, but that is time.
Okay.
Okay. You
Have I taken 5 minutes?
Yes.
My goodness.
You realise you've not given any time for Mohammed to come in there. You've taken your spot.
You should have stopped me at 2.5 minutes.
Oh, I'm sure he'll forgive you.
I'm sorry, Chairman. I'll stop.
Yes, you will. Okay. Right, members. Questions, please, to Nazim. Councillor Sanford.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Khan. I'm not sure whether you were involved in the planning application back in 2003, but I'm kind of posed the same question to you that I put to Councillor Ali. We've actually been told that when the application was made in 2003, there was no request for permission to actually broadcast the call to prayer. So what some of the objectors are saying is that, given the fact it wasn't required in 2003 and hasn't been required in the period since then. So could you just outline what has actually changed that means that you think it's now required?
Thank you, Councillor Sanford. I think I was involved at that time. And I can tell you that my own group was opposed to it because, they were saying it's going to be built in the residential area. The building will have a negative impact on it. The minarets will have a negative impact on it and everything else. So our interest at that time really was to have the mosque built. Now, if we would have insisted on what you're saying, it wasn't our attention anyway. But if we would have insisted, I think the risk that we were sort of taking was that there would probably be no mosque. So hence, that was the reason. Time had moved on. You've got the elderly community kind of passing away. You've got a younger generation coming up, and they are saying is that we are part of this society. So why can't we have this? So I think that's what's kind of changed it, over the period of time.
Okay, can I ask a democratic officer a question, please? Mr. Cricket wants to ask a question, but he's not a member. Is that permissible or not?
Correct, yeah. And for members, it is just for members to ask questions of the speakers, not for objectors or anyone else or the speakers, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Over.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Nazim, I remember when the mosque went through council for the first time and you were walking along and saying, no, we're not going to have call to prayer. Now, I know times change, but something has occurred to me over the last couple of days that people talk about giving the mosque a trial and to see how it goes over a number of days, months or years. But if we say to one mosque, yes, you can have the call to prayer, surely other mosques could turn around and say, well, they've got the call to prayer. Why shouldn't we? And we could end up with, I don't know how many mosques, all having the call to prayer, all roughly spaced seconds or minutes after the previous mosque. Because I've seen a situation where I've been in a city of probably 200 mosques. And of the 20 that had a call to prayer, they all did it slightly differently. And over the minutes, it wasn't 5 minutes, it turned into about 40 minutes. So just to reappraise, there's another danger of us having a large number of mosques all having a call to prayer at virtually the same time.
Councillor, I think you're absolutely right. And that is a big question. Peterborough has 5 mosques, 2 on Gladstone Street, 1 on Cromwell Road, and the other one is Burton Street, and the 5th one is on Alma Road. Those are the recognized mosques. The rest of them are not mosques, so they can't have call for prayer. If you look at the city of Bradford, plenty of mosques in there, but I think I can only recall, I know, maybe there are more, but I know there's only 1 mosque that has call for prayer. So, if the other mosques do apply for call for prayer, they should be looked at as planning application as on their own merits. But as you quite rightly asked about the time changes, we could adjust the time because we all pray at different time. There's only 1 or 2 prayers that we pray at the same time. So the different times prayer can be called for prayer is allowed. On this time for calling for prayer, Mr. Harding will tell you that if the trial period is given, we have to put in a system which is kind of breakable, if you like, that you don't go over the period. Since the application, I've been in my own mosque, can't talk about the rest of
my own mosque, I've been actually timing the person who calls for prayer. The maximum time he takes is 3 minutes. It's between 2.5 minutes to 3 minutes. Now, I can't see anybody going above. We put 5 minutes just to be on the safe side, but I can't see a call for prayer lasting more than 3 minutes. Not at our mosque, but there may be occasions where you have somebody who would want to actually, kind of take it a bit further, yeah. But that is where this mechanism will come in and, prevent it. Either we will cut it out or whatever, but we will insist that whoever calls for prayer stays within the time that is allowed. And that is what we are asking for. And on the other hand, I think, if I may, if you ask Mr. Harding, the equipment that we will buy, they're kind of expensive, very expensive equipment. And the other hand that we are asking for is that, look, if you give us a short time trial, we will not be able to work out whether it's in our favor or not. So hence what we are asking for is that if it's given a kind of prolonged time, so we can judge or we can monitor it. Summertime is different. Wintertime, as you probably know, is different. Wintertime is, the sun goes down very early. And summertime, sun goes down at kind of late. So hence the mid-afternoon or the afternoon prayer, Zohar prayer, is about an hour's difference. So summertime is 2 o'clock and the wintertime is 1 o'clock. So hence there is no much difference in that one. So that's what we are asking. If, your good selves allow us to do that.
Okay, could I ask a supplementary, Chair?
Yes, do.
Okay, a short one. Is there not a temptation there in the mosque with a number of calls to prayer stretching over the week or even fortnight to have the whole process on a timing clock and on a tape, and so it's all done automatically?
That is a situation where some places are kind of does happen. But ideally, I think it's a live call for prayer is preferable. I've yet come across where the recorded call for prayer. I mean, that could be, I don't know. I mean, we'll have to ask our scholars whether that is permitted or not. But we can look at that. I can't see any reason why that can't happen.
Okay,
because
thank you.
The technology and the system can do that for us.
Well, next time you're in Abu Dhabi, in the UAE, just have a look at the system there, and that's precisely what they have. Anyway, thank you very much.
All right, Councillor Coles was next.
Thank you, Chair, and very nice to hear from you, Nazim. I wonder if I could ask you about the idea you have about the trial. How do you think we can capture what people are feeling about a call if it goes on for 18 months or 2 years before any other consideration? My concern is that people could potentially face experiencing it without knowing that they have an opportunity to object.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Look, I think what we are saying is that, look, if people living within the call, within the locality, because that's what we are looking for, isn't it? Because outside the area that we are saying, people will have different opinions, so on and so forth. People will have different opinion within the locality. Now, if, for instance, I live 10 yards away from it, and I hear this at 1 o'clock, say, in the afternoon, and I don't like it, I can always open my door and come say, look, I'm hearing this noise, what's going on? That, from our point, would be a complaint. Or the same person could pick up the phone and say to the local authority, I'm having noise trouble here, what is going on? So they'd probably be able to tick the box saying that there isn't an objection. There is no defined instrument, if you like, how we could monitor it. The only way we could monitor it, your officers could monitor it, if somebody either picks up the phone or picks up a pen and says, I'm having consistently noise every day. I don't like it. People will, whoever do not complain, we will assume that they are happy with it or they're living with it. That's as far as I can go with that. I think.
Councillor Dowson.
Yes. Just observation. Don't we already have calls to prayer in Peterborough, the cathedral on a Sunday, St. John's Church on a Sunday? Thursday night, we have all the churches with their bells practice night. I feel to a certain extent, they're asking for equality and asking for a compromise. Possibly we should consider that in light of what we already possess in the country. Okay, just an observation.
Thank you, Alan. Councillor Barker.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Mr. Khan, thank you for joining us. Just a quick question. Do you have any knowledge of how other cities have coped when a term of consent agreement being put in place for the call to prayer?
Thank you. I suppose different cities have different policies and the way they kind of operate. I don't know. But the only place I know of is Bradford, that one mosque.
The public, how the public responded to it?
No idea whatsoever. Oh, no idea. I'm sorry. No.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Nigel Simons.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Khan. Yeah, I'm just curious. Did you not consider engaging a sound engineer so we could have more of an idea of what the impact would be?
We did, Chairman, Councillor, but that would not give us what we are looking for. What would the sound engineer give us? Because what we are looking for really, I don't think there is an issue about sound. I think it's issue of how our next door neighbors or the locality that we are proposing would feel. Because if we say, the sound engineer says, yeah, absolutely fine. You can have it 10 decimal, 15 decimal, or 100 decimal, I don't know. But that would be his opinion, but he won't, or he or she will not be able to tell us what would be the opinion of the public that are going to receive it. So hence, that was the reason, or that is the reason that we are saying, we don't know how will it kind of take out. Our officers don't know how it will pan out. Hence, that is the reason we are saying, is that, if we can trial it, we can test the waters, and if it goes against us, all well and good. If it goes in our favor, we both happy.
Okay.
I've got a supplementary there, John.
Sorry. Okay, go.
No, I just haven't experienced this. I know they can graph, how it affects, an area over a large area. So it's disappointing for me that that wasn't done.
Okay. Is that it, Nigel? Done? Yeah?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I've got a question for you, Nazim. You probably remember in the last lockdown, there was a similar request to try something with another mosque. And against Mr. Harding's advice, the Chief Executive myself said, if you could agree amongst yourselves, we will allow you to have a call for prayer at 3 o'clock on a Friday. Just one mosque, but you've got to agree it between yourselves, and let's try it. And you couldn't agree amongst yourselves. So what confidence have we got without a policy to fall back on and enforce that you do what you say? in terms of control it, because we do, I think we do have to control this somehow, because you said there's 5 mosques, I was told there was 7, but let's say it's 5. You know, if you're all doing it at the same time, or we give you permission, then we can't stop anybody else without a policy. What I'm saying is I think we need a policy, but there you go. We'd like to answer that.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That's the first time I'm hearing what you just said, Chairman. The only thing that I remember, we received a letter from Gillian because Azan in Medina, particularly in Ramadan time, wanted to call for prayer. And Gillian's response was, because there was no application, we have to go through a proper process. There was no application and she couldn't do anything. So that is the only thing that I heard. Nobody told me about this Friday prayer at 3 o'clock or agree amongst yourself. I'm sorry, Chairman. As I say, that's the first time I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, well, the letter you got from Gillian after that was the official letter, but we were trying to make, you know, some compromise with it.
Sorry, yeah, I was not informed of that.
Okay. I don't have any other members wishing to speak. So I think I'm going over to thank you all now. Can we please mute your microphones? And do any members have any questions of officers? Please use your raise hand function. Councillor, yes, okay, they're moving. Councillor Sanford.
Yes, thank you. I've got a couple of questions I want to pose to Mr. Harding. The first question is, there's been a number of references during the discussion that we've had about what the cumulative impact could be, that if we grant permission for this particular mosque, then other mosques may then put in applications. But am I not right in thinking that we should be looking at what the situation is with this particular one and not trying to speculate about what may happen in the future?
Through you, Chairman, as we don't have any other applications for call to prayer, we can only consider this particular application, and we can consider the cumulative impacts as and when we get other applications, if it were to come to pass that this one was approved in some shape or form.
Yeah, that's confirming what I thought. The other question I've got for you is that there's been a couple of references to the fact that we don't have any policy in our local plan. But isn't it the case that the National Planning Policy Framework forms part of our local planning policy? And it's actually in the report at page 22. There seems to be quite a clear policy in there. And what it says is that they should mitigate and reduce them to a minimum potential adverse impacts resulting from noise. So what that's saying is not to get rid of it completely, but to reduce it. And they should avoid any noise which gives rise to significant adverse impacts on their health. Now, I haven't heard anyone argue that there's any actual evidence that this is going to cause significant impacts on their health. So I was just wondering what your grounds were for refusing it when that is clearly what the National Planning Policy frameworks say.
Through you, Chairman, to start off with, government planning policy, local plan policy does not have policies to cover every single different type of application that an authority might receive, because you know, our documentations on planning policies would be hugely long if we did that. And what we do have is a number of what I'll call generic policies, which can be applied to a wide variety of development proposals. So both the national policy and our local plan policies talk about how do we determine planning applications where that development is potentially going to have adverse impacts on existing adjacent developments. So it could be sort of visual impact, it could be an overbearing relationship, it could be noise, it could be smells, so on and so forth. So in terms of this particular application, there's a degree of subjectivity. So whilst if you were to apply the noise levels as suggested by the Leicester City Council guidance, then in that authority's eyes, they consider that that wouldn't have an adverse impact. But different people have a different opinion over what level of noise is or isn't acceptable. As is outlined in the report before you, there's no standardized noise assessment methodology as there is for other sources of noise. So it's difficult to be absolutely sure as to, in a scientific way, as to whether or not there would be scientific harm or not. So what the recommendation is based on is the fact that by its very nature, the call to prayer, just as church bells are, that's a noise source which stands out against the background noise that is experienced in the environment in so many ways. That's the very purpose of church bells and the call to prayer, for it to be noticed. But it's that very fact that it is noticeable and very different compared to the general thrum of urban noise, it is the thing that could impact on somebody's residential amenity. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Chair. Nick, thanks very much. I'd like a bit of advice, really, on what planning has done in terms of assessing the level of impact on the local residents. And has there been any assessment done about the nature of the local population? Because one assumes that if one has a significantly Muslim population around a particular mosque, and that wouldn't necessarily cause objection, but if we had particular information about the makeup of the community, that might help us in our decision.
Through you, Chairman. Yes, I was going to raise this because it was mentioned by one of the speakers in their sort of presentation. And forgive me, I'm probably not going to be that helpful. So as has been mentioned, the development falls within North Ward. And in North Ward, the Muslim community, this is census 2011 data, I should say, the Muslim community sort of population makes up 16% of the population, and Christians 54%, with no religion / not stated making up 28 as the next highest level. But the sort of peculiarity with this particular location of the application site is it's quite close to the border with other wards. So you've got Central Ward, which is in close proximity. That's got a Muslim population of 42%, Christian 34%. And then to the east of the application sites, not quite as close as Central from memory, but relatively close, you've got a Muslim population of 15% compared to Christian 54%. But because the actual application site sits at the crossroads, so to speak, I don't think you can easily draw any conclusions.
Thank you. And just a supplementary, Chair, is, of course, it's 2011. We don't have anything more current about the current makeup of the population, or indeed the transient nature of the population locally.
Personally, I'm not aware of any more recent up-to-date information. And as you say, the makeup of areas does change over time. This part of Peterborough has evolved. It's had a number of iterations as to what the basis of the community is, and that might well continue into the future. Who knows?
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Barkham.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Harding. Just to clarify how this would work, so the proposal put forward isn't necessarily requesting temporary consent, but as a committee tonight or through the process, is it possible to grant temporary consent if that was the decision of the committee?
Can you repeat that, Simon? You lost it in the middle, or we lost it in the middle.
Oh, sorry. So just a clarification of what we can and can't do. So the application hasn't necessarily put forward a request for a temporary consent, but is it within the power of this committee to, if it was to agree, can we agree temporary consent to this proposal or not? Is that within the framework?
Through you, Chairman, to first address a point that was made by one of the speakers earlier on, I'm duty bound as a planning officer to make a positive recommendation to you. When I say positive, it's either got to be for approval or refusal. I have to do that. I can't sit on the fence. If committee members tonight disagree with my recommendation, then you're perfectly entitled to do that. And if you wanted to grant a temporary consent, then you are able to proceed on that basis. So if you were to do that, you'd have to consider about, what is the length of that temporary consent, how many calls to prayer do you want to allow, on which days, if indeed you want to restrict it at all, and so on and so forth. But you are potentially able to grant.
Thank you. And a brief. Okay, thank you. And a brief supplementary, Chair, is that okay?
Yeah, yes, please.
Thank you. Nick, so I suspect throughout the research, after we see this application, we might have information from other authorities who have allowed the amplified call to prayer. Do you have any knowledge of any feedback they have received after allowing the amplified call to prayer?
No, I've not been privy to that information, no.
So it's Simon.
Okay. Right,
yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Yazzie?
That's it, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I did have two questions, but Councillor Barkham has covered one of mine. Thank you. My question to Nick is, in your professional opinion, what would be the appropriate noise level per se that would be appropriate for this planning application? So what would you say would be the appropriate level in order to potentially grant approval?
I don't think you're qualified to answer that, Mr. Harding, are you?
Through you, Chairman, in the report before you, the environmental health team have referred to the noise level that is utilised by Leicester City Council, and in the absence of any national prescribed methodology, so to speak, or best practice, if committee were minded to make an approval of some sort, then that noise level is what we would look to impose on any consent. Thank you, Chairman.
Is that satisfactory, Councillor Azim?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Mr. Harding. An observation and a question at the same time, if I may, Mr. Harding. When allowed planning permission in the first instance, this building had condition on it which restricted the amplification of music or voices projecting from the building. What faith or reliance can local neighbours in this situation and in others have in any conditions that are placed on planning permission if we would grant otherwise?
Through you, Chairman, the best way I can answer this question is to divorce it away from the nature of the application that's in front of us this evening. So we might get a planning application for a factory unit, and the development proposal sets its stall out as to its component parts, what its hours of operation are wanting to be, what plant and equipment it wants. And in granting planning permission, we would put on the relevant conditions applicable to that development. And some of those conditions would be put in place because the development proposal in the first instance hasn't included within it any of the component parts which could go on to be potentially of concern to us and have an impact on residential amenity. So by putting on conditions that prevent things from being added onto that planning permission automatically through the use of permitted development rights, we can help protect people. So what that system does is give a level of control. The law doesn't allow us to stop people from applying for planning permission. People are automatically allowed to apply. Whether or not they get planning permission is another matter entirely. So going back to my factory analogy, if that factory said, we want to operate up until 5 o'clock Monday to Friday, and then they apply to us to say, oh, we want to vary our operating conditions so that we open until 5:30, then we will look at what the impact of that factory being open for that extra half an hour. And we might conclude it's perfectly okay and there's no harm to residential amenity. Or alternatively, we might conclude, I'm sorry, the impacts are too great and therefore it's refused. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Sandford.
Yeah, I just want to come back on that point because that's quite an interesting argument, actually. So is in effect what you're saying that we shouldn't really be giving any credence to the fact that the condition was put on because because the purpose of putting the condition on back in 2003 was to require actually require that if the call to prayer or similar things were going to be broadcast, that the sort of applicants would need to apply for planning permissions. So are you saying that the fact that that condition was put on in 2003 didn't necessarily mean that if an application is made in the future that it's going to be refused?
Through you, Chairman. In the scenario in which the original planning application for the mosque didn't include within it a proposal for a call to prayer, had we not put on the condition, then in theory, that call to prayer could happen all day, every day, and as loud as you like, and the council would have no control over it whatsoever through the planning system. Obviously, it could have control through the noise nuisance process. So just because we removed that permitted development right, you can't do a call to prayer, that doesn't mean to say planning permission has to be automatically refused. What you have to do is to look at what the scheme is and decide whether or not that scheme would or wouldn't have detrimental impact on the amenity of neighbours.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Howling. I don't think you've got any more questions. Okay, and I don't think you've got an opportunity here, from what I can see, to make any further comments. So, thank you. So now we need to move to debate. Right, members, how do you want to handle this? You want to take the officer's recommendation and talk to it and at the beginning, or what do you want to do? Stephen Lane.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to everybody who's spoken. and relevant advice from Nick Harding. I've had no questions because I'm trying to apply my knowledge of planning policies, local planning policies as well as national, in this respect, in this case. And I will not consider the makeup of a local community, either by religion, race, or however, because I think all that needs to be applied here is planning rules and guidance. And I think that the amplification of music and voices that was considered in the original application still applies now. It recognised then that sounds such as that being suggested would be unfamiliar and intrusive to the background noise, general background noise. Also, alongside the consideration, need to have regard to human rights and equalities. Now, I'm a great believer in equal rights for everyone. But when it comes down to human rights, they can work both sides, you know, towards both sides of the argument. But one that I will uphold mostly is Article 8, and that's the regard for private and family life. Now, any sudden noise in the environment could be disturbing for anybody when they're trying to conduct their general life. And the same would go for temporary planning, because no matter what sort of agreement we might have for a year or 18 months, whatever, it could still disturb somebody's state of their life, if you know what I mean. So at this stage in the debate, I'd ask that we uphold Condition 8 and support Officer's recommendation to refuse. Thank you, Chair.
Are you moving that, Councillor Lane?
If there's no further debate, I would like to, yes.
Okay. Oh, have you moved that? Can I have a seconder for that, and then we'll debate it?
Sorry, Chair, I think we should just go on to a debate from any members first before we ask for a proposal and a seconder.
Well, I think Stephen's just proposed something.
Yes, but I think there might be some other members who've put their hands up.
No, Chair, I did say in the absence of any other debate, so I'll come back to you if I need to.
Okay. Councillor Sanford, then.
Yeah, I think it's normal, and certainly when I've been to planning committee, that you actually have a general debate first, and then somebody comes up with a proposal. So I don't think we should be preempting that process. But I think that I've actually listened carefully to what Councillor Lane has said, and I think I would actually take issue with a couple of points. I think that we really have to, as a committee, I think, to determine this planning application predominantly in line with what's in our Peterborough local plan and what's in the national planning policy framework. Now, policy LP 17 actually says that planning permission will not be granted for development which is overbearing or causes noise or other disturbance. So that's a fairly general policy. But going back to the question that I asked to Mr. Harding, I'd refer you again to page 22 and paragraph 180 of the National Planning Framework, because that is important, because if we actually refuse this planning application, it's possible that the applicants could appeal, and then it would go to a planning inspector who would look at national planning policy. So it does say that planning application should avoid any noise that gives rise to significant adverse impacts on health and quality of life. So I think what I would actually ask is, do we actually have any actual evidence, any hard evidence, apart from people's speculation or opinion? Do we actually have any hard evidence that the noise that would be caused by this would give rise to significant adverse impacts on health or quality of life. So, I think it is possible that could be the case. But I think also, thinking of the point about equalities, I think it was mentioned earlier on that, if you go, I was in our group room at the town hall, and I've been there on a number of occasions, and I've heard quite loud chiming of bells from the cathedral. So, that is a sort of call to prayer. It's not an oral thing, but it's actually quite noisy. Now, some people may find that overbearing, or some people may find it unpleasant, but it comes down to a matter of opinion. So I think, to cut a long argument short, I think the only way we're going to find out the answer to the question is whether this is overbearing or whether it's going to cause, a significant amount of harm to people, is by actually trialing it, because we are aware that there aren't any other instances in Peterborough where this happens, but we do know there are sort of other places in the country where calls to prayer are broadcast, and we're also aware that there are Christian churches that do have some quite noisy practices that I've already referred to. So I would be in favour, as Mr. Khan put forward the point, that maybe trial this, maybe say one call to prayer on each day, and I would actually trial it over quite a short period, because I think you are going to know fairly quickly whether the volume at which this is broadcast is going to cause any adverse impact. So I think a trial is the way forward.
What would you think was a trial? Once a day, and for how long, or whatever?
If I had to choose my personal, I think one of the things that's being talked about is probably in some of the concerns that the objectors have put forward. They've said, well, if the call to prayer happens at sunset, will this have an adverse impact during the summer? So I would say maybe try it for like a 6-month period. But I think that could be done by negotiation between the sort of applicants and the council.
Okay, we'll consider that. Other members, Councillor Yazzie?
Thank you, Chair. I do agree with what Councillor Sanford has said, and because of that reason, I am minded to actually agree with Mr. Khan and go for a temporary consent. However, I don't agree with the 6 month, and the reason for that is, as season changes, so does prayer times. So if we grant it for a 6 month basis, by the time they reach the end of that, we're looking for the prayer times to change again. So we wouldn't be able to trial how residents and the community would respond to the call of prayer. So I think I do agree with the temporary consent, but I just feel like that 6 month needs to be a bit longer, so we can try it out throughout the summer where the days are longer and where the days are shorter, so we have more evidence to base on how long we would allow the call of prayer to be amplified for.
Councillor Over.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, Chair. I'm extremely sympathetic towards this application, but I do have my doubts about it. First of all, we've heard so much about church bells to a degree in this application, or from members. It seems to be almost every month there's something in the newspaper about somebody moving to a place and complaining about the church bells. In Barnock, in my own area, we had somebody complain about the church bells, and the reply was, well, the bells have been ringing for 800 years and you've been in your house next door for 6 months. You should have realized what was going on. However, whether it's church bells or a call to prayer, by their very nature, they're loud. And will they offer the chance for the residents of the area the peaceful enjoyment of their property? And I think that's doubtful. I'm very unsure about that. And I also think that with any trial, it might go on for 6 months, it might go on for a year, no matter what. But over time, the loudness of the call to prayer might increase and nobody really recognizes it or knows about it. The regularity might increase. Other mosques might say, well, it's okay for this one, let's do it and see what happens. And before we know it, it gets all out of control. So for both those areas of opinion, the first one is that I think they will stop people having a peaceful enjoyment of their property nearby. And I also think any trial would tend to become uncontrollable. I would hesitate to approve this application.
Councillor Coles.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also struggling with this one. I'm minded of the officer's recommendation for refusal, and I completely understand the issues around noise, because after all, reaction to noise is very much a subjective thing. I think if I come away from this particular instance, you look at the complaints I received over car cruises and noises from cars, one incident was sufficient to produce a great deal of objection. A second issue is around if we were to consider a trial, and I think I did speak to Mr. Khan about this, we didn't go into any great details. I'm not sure we have a means of sampling accurately whether people are objecting or not. The fact that they don't contact us is not really a strong enough argument to identify whether we should be concerned about the noise or not. We need to have a way of collecting that, and I'm not convinced we're going to get it. We might find, because in that area there's a number of rental properties, for example, that people simply don't rent and move out. And I think we're thereby establishing a very difficult task for ourselves to be able to prove that there isn't the level of adverse impact in terms of noise. So in those circumstances, I'm struggling to think that we could do a trial and really get the result that would give us the sort of indicator we want to find out, which is whether it has adverse impact on the local residents or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barkham.
Thank you, Chair. Just briefly, Nick Harding commented earlier that this proposal isn't entirely based on planning law, because all scenarios are not catered for. So there is some subjectivity, and I can hear lots of speculation from members regards to what may or may not happen, rightly to comment on it, but we don't know that might be the case. We can get some things in place to actually see if or what the feedback may be. If we're worried about how to gather that information, I'm sure we can think of something. However, we are the information gathering organisation. It's important that the people who do comment feel strongly enough to comment about it. If someone doesn't complain, normally the case, they feel it's okay. It's only those who don't like something so much, they actually comment on it. But people who might like it may also want to give feedback to say it's working out okay, it doesn't bother everybody. So I would probably be more liable to proceed with some form of temporary consent, just to find out and to see what may or may not happen. If people are afraid of change or somehow against progression in some way with some social cohesion attached to different cultures.
Simon.
Oh, such a good point he was making as well. Can you hear me? Have I still gone?
I heard you clear enough, Simon.
Am I gone? Okay. Can you hear me now? Am I gone?
Yeah.
I think it's the chairman that's frozen.
Okay. Okay. I don't know what you heard, what you didn't hear. So, yes. So, just to click that at the end then. So, I'll be more liable to proceed with some form of temporary consent on the basis that the majority of this is based on subjectivity and not planning law. Otherwise, the debate will probably be much more limited because there'll be a lot more legal constraints. So that's maybe my personal position.
Sorry, members, we've just lost the chair for a second. I think he's just going to try and log back in. I think he's gone. So just wait just 2 seconds just to see when he comes back.
Dan, I think it might be best if Councillor Barkham goes again for the third time, just so that the chairman has heard everything.
Yeah, just make sure Councillor Aldridge. Yeah, you don't mute Councillor Aldridge.
I lost my internet completely then. Okay, sorry, Councillor Barkham, you froze. So would you like to just repeat where you were?
Sure. I don't know what he was up to, but the gist of the comment was the application form, application for this isn't purely based on planning law. Otherwise, the debate tonight will probably be more constrained. So there's an immense amount of subjectivity attached to this, which means it's going to be a lot of opinion. And I'm hearing tonight quite a lot of speculation rather than positive comments to say, let's give it a go. We don't know what's going to happen is the end of it. And I'm sure we can find out a way where we can get or try to gather data from some feedback. If anybody feels strong enough to say, I don't like it, or conversely to say, it's great, I can't have a problem with it. I'd be liable to lean towards a temporary consent in whatever form we may possibly agree, to actually find out and answer those speculative questions rather than out of fear of the unknown saying no. I would rather find out. Thank you.
We could go to another authority and listen to one that has got permission to get a feel for it. Councillor Yasmin.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to quickly touch on something that Councillor Coles mentioned, and then again, Councillor Barkham also mentioned it, about how we would get data and how would we get opinions from residents. And I just wanted to quickly mention something about fireworks. I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only councillor who's been inundated with emails from residents who are uncomfortable with fireworks. And as councillors, we are the first port of call for our residents. If they're not happy with something, or they have an issue with something, or they feel uncomfortable, they will always contact us and let us know. And I'm fully confident that if any resident did have a problem with the call to prayer or was uncomfortable with it, they will definitely voice that opinion, as they have done in the past with anything that has made them uncomfortable. So I just wanted to just say that very quickly. Thank you.
Councillor Sanford.
Yeah, I think the more I hear the arguments on this, the more convinced I become that we should go for temporary consent. I'm quite happy if Councillor Yassin wants to propose a longer period. I think that would be fine. I think want to make one more point, because I think this is really important. I agree with what Councillor Barkham's conclusion was, but I don't agree with part of his argument, because he was saying, this is purely about opinion, it's not about planning policy. But we actually have a clear in the national planning framework, it actually says that in order to refuse this, we need to be convinced that it gives rise to significant adverse impacts on health and quality of life. So if we refuse this and this case goes to appeal, a planning inspector will say, Peterborough City Council, when you refuse this, what was your evidence that this is going to have significant adverse impact on health and or quality of life? And I think if we're going to base it on planning policy rather than what people's opinions are, I think the only way we're going to find out the answer to that question is by trialling it.
Question to you then, Nick. Where are you going to set the volume? We're not qualified to do that, are we?
Is that Harding or Sanford, Chairman?
No, sorry. I was asking Nick if he's coming around to that. How do you set the volume? You could have it on a trial and it's so low everybody likes it, or you've got to have it on some sort of volume that it can be heard and be judged. And perhaps
That's already have a maximum.
Well, I would back that over to Mr. Harding, because presumably, you know, our planning officers could negotiate with the applicant an appropriate level. In fact, I think in the report that we've got, there's some comments from the pollution team when they talk about, you know, conducting a trial that would be based on, you know, we could easily, you know, go to another area that has these things and take a volume that they would have. So.
Right, I've got Councillor Cole.
Yes, Chair, thank you. Just coming back on that point about noise, the difficulty we have here is that if we're trying to set a volume, then we've got to come up with some assessment that can be produced that's independent. I don't think we can do that, because the very difficulty in dealing with noise complaints, and you know, we've all experienced it, is what is quiet to one person is not quiet to another. And so we're going to be very difficult to set a particular level of sound. And also we don't quite know.
You've frozen, Andy.
Oh, frozen. I think you have actually. I shall wait until you come back to us.
It's the chair that's frozen.
Andy, you're frozen.
I think not me, but you Chair, you might need to come back in again.
Yeah. You're freezing, John. We can't hear you.
Thank you, members. Yeah, we're just going to try and get Councillor Holdridge, the chair, back. Members, we're just still trying to get a hold of Councillor Holdridge. So what I'm going to do while we try and get a hold is just put a slide up just to say we're adjourned just for a couple of minutes while we get him back into the room. Hi, just an update. The internet has gone down at Councillor Holmes, the chairs. He is going to be dialing in the next few minutes, so he'll be dialing into the meeting.
Dan, if I may just speak briefly whilst we're waiting for things to come back on. I have a phone call to make, so I'm going to excuse myself if that's okay.
Yes, Edward, that's fine. You can leave. It'll be on YouTube.
Thank you very much. I'll watch it on the live stream, but I thank you for the opportunity. And I wish you all a pleasant evening for the rest of the evening.
John Holdridge.
Join the meeting.
Hello.
Hi, Councillor
Hello.
Aldrich.
Oh, right. Okay. I thought you weren't going to let me in.
No, we're here. Okay. Well, I'm glad you managed to make your way back in, Councillor Aldrich.
Yeah, we're on the phone. All right.
Good. Okay. So we're just going through the debate, and the next person we have is Councillor Coles. So I'll look out for the hands for you, let the chair let you know who's going to speak.
Yeah, because I can't see anything now. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just to continue, I'll try and be brief because obviously we're struggling with technology. My concern is around the objectivity of measuring noise in any trial. I'm drawing from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government guidance from July 2019 on noise and its mitigation. The issue for me really is that if we have a trial, we'll have to have a way of identifying what level of noise. The level of noise is entirely subjective to the people who are hearing it, so we can't really set a specific decibel level and expect that to either be acceptable or not acceptable because we're dealing with people who are affected differently by noise. And then we don't know what the impact will be cumulatively over a period of time or in a particular time of day. So my concern is once we don't know that, we then don't have an adequate means of testing to see what that impact is. And it's simply not acceptable to say, oh, people will complain, they always complain, and then we'll know. Well, even if that were the case, how many complaints should we receive before we say, yes, okay, those are sufficient to suggest that this is not a good idea? So what I would rather do is to consider that we cannot run a trial when there are so many imponderables and so many areas of subjectivity around what constitutes no impact and what constitutes impact. Thank you.
Okay. Is somebody moving something? I guess we've done this to death.
No, we've got two left, Councillor Hollis. We have Councillor Sanford first.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I think before Councillor Holditch went off the call, he asked me a question about, what conditions would be imposed if we were to have a trial. If you look at page 24 of the report, the actual Officer for Pollution Control says that to assist with this decision, their responses included advice which is taken from Leicester City Council. And what he's saying is that if the LPA is minded to give temporary approval, they've actually made recommendations on conditions of the amount of noise that would be permissible and the duration and frequency of the call. So if we need someone to propose something, I would propose that we do a trial for a 12-month period using those conditions on page 24, and that we base it on one call of prayer per day, because I think that was what was suggested.
Did you say, Dan, I've got another speaker?
Yeah, you've got Councillor Lane as the last speaker.
Councillor Lane.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back on a couple of comments from Councillor Sanford and Coles, I believe. Councillor Sanford was saying that we didn't have any means of measuring the noise, or whether that be the level or volume. But the applicant is stating that he wants to see this noise projected as far as Lincoln Road, and then ideally at the same radius going round. But then you've also got to consider the prevailing wind, how far it would carry at that time as well, in the case of strong winds. Now, and I'll reiterate, and Councillor Coles has said quite a lot, quite eloquently, on the measurement of even temporary noise, the temporary permission, and that you're going to subject people in that time to a noise that will make their life for that short period of time. I know it's only 3 minutes, however many times a day we give it, and repetitively for 6 months or a year, as someone suggested. And I would still rather we didn't go down that route of temporary permission. So I'm still open to debate, but I'll come back if I need to, Councillor Holditch.
Thank you, Councillor Lane.
Thank you. Yeah, we have one last one, Councillor Allen.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you very much, Chair. There's been some very interesting points and indeed many arguments put forward for both points of view and indeed the middle ground of a period of time trial. But I just think that the level of noise that causes disturbance or distress is personal and subjective. And in that consideration, I would support officers' recommendation to refuse the variation. And I would move that we support the officer's recommendation to refuse the application.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
I have no more speakers for debate. So we would now move on, Chair, to someone for making a proposal.
I've got two proposals, I think, haven't I?
Yes, if we just, if one of the members raised their hand to make the proposal.
Okay. I can't see that, of course.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Sanford with the first hand, Chair.
Okay. Make a proposal in detail, please.
Sorry, I'd just like to repeat my proposal that we have a trial using the conditions on page 24 of the report, and that we and that it be carried out for a 12-month period.
Okay. Seek your advice, Dan. Do I need an amendment to that, or should we just vote against it and it falls and then it becomes the officer recommendation?
Yeah, we've just got Nick. Nick's just going to ask a question. So I think when we have a proposal that's against officer recommendation, Nick just checks through first.
Okay.
Nick, you're on mute.
Mute.
Yeah. Thank you. Through you, Chairman. So Councillor Sanford has put forward a proposal to grant a 12-month temporary consent with the condition with regard to the noise limit, but consideration also has to be given to how many calls to prayer does he want to propose, on how many days a week, what would be the earliest time of day that the call to prayer could take place, what's the latest time the call to prayer could take place, and finally, it would be necessary in order to comply with the proposed noise condition for there to be an additional condition which requires the installation of noise equipment which would enable the condition on noise limit to be complied with. Thank you, Chairman.
Could I just come back on that? Rather than me proposing that, there was a suggestion made earlier on that could be negotiated between the applicants and the planning officers. That would seem to be a more sensible way forward.
You, Chairman, I think that's quite a difficult thing for me to do because I'm not sure what is in your minds as to what you think would be acceptable. What do you feel on that? Could I bring Stephen Turnbull in, please?
Stephen?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think I agree with Nick. That is not something that would reasonably be possible. Quite often it's possible to delegate to officers the drafting of conditions, but officers do need a steer on this as to where those conditions are going and what they should be. Thank you.
Are we qualified to do that? I would ask.
Through you, Chairman. Well, the application is for 3 times a day, 7 days a week, not lasting more than 5 minutes each call to prayer. So if members are happy with staying with that under the temporary consent, then that's perfectly acceptable. That's the committee's decision to make. But if it wanted, for example, it to only be 3 minutes long rather than up to 5 minutes, then that's something that you could put in place. Or if you wanted to restrict it only to Friday prayers, that's another example of something that you might want to put in place.
Okay, can I come back on that then to make it easy and to avoid us tying ourselves into knots over this? Can I propose what is actually being applied for, which is 3 calls to prayer on a daily basis, but that we do that on a trial? That seems to me a clear proposal.
So through you, Chairman, if I may. So the earliest that you would want a call to prayer to start would be 8 AM and the latest 9 PM.
Sorry, I thought what's actually in the report, it says 3 calls to prayer on a daily basis. I thought one was going to be early afternoon, one mid-afternoon, and one at sunset. So that's not 8 o'clock in the morning, is it?
Okay, well, if you're happy to proceed on that basis, so given we'll limit it so it could be no later than 9:30 at night. Is that?
Yeah, well, given the fact that sunset the latest happens is 9:20, that would be a reasonable thing to say. Yeah.
Okay. So somebody going to read out for me what Nick is proposing.
If I can, on behalf of Councillor Sanford, so it's to grant a 12-month temporary planning permission with the maximum noise limit as identified on page 24 of your report. It'll be call to prayer 3 times a day, not lasting more than 5 minutes at each call to prayer. And there would be an additional condition with regard to the installation of the noise equipment to facilitate the compliance with the noise limit.
Point of accuracy, Chair.
Yeah.
Just to be clear on the lateness of the last call to prayer, the proposal would have to cater for the midsummer late prayer at 21:28 and then give it 5 minutes. So I would say it would have to be 21:23 as an absolute, sorry, 33 as an absolute maximum.
Okay. I mean, I haven't spoken, but I think you shouldn't do anything until the council's got a policy on it. And we ought to ask officers to go away and come back with a policy that we can all agree, because once you've agreed to this, you'll have every other mosque in town wanting to do it, and we'd understand that. But so we need some guidance to go with it. But there you go. I mean, Nick's proposed. Has he got a seconder?
Councillor, yes.
Yeah, happy to second that.
Yeah. With permission, does that time, latest time, does that contravene any local laws that we have? Because I think there's something in the law saying no noise past 8 o'clock at night.
I think it's 9 o'clock. Isn't that right, Mr. Harding?
Through you, the report to you refers to legislation that controls loudspeakers in the street, but obviously this isn't a loudspeaker in the street because it's within a building. So the 9 o'clock sort of cut off that we've identified in the report relates to speakers in the street. But if you are happy with the sort of speaker being in a building and going on until at 9:33 at the very latest, then that is your decision to make.
Thank you, that's clear.
Yeah, so Chair, we had a proposal from Councillor Sanford, which was seconded from Councillor Barkham, with the temporary consent and as per the application as front of committee, as Nick Harding explained. So if you're happy, Chair, if you want me to run through the vote on that.
Yes, if you would, please.
Thank you. So members, if you will let me know whether you're for, against or abstain to the proposal from Councillor Sanford. Councillor Allen.
Sorry, is that Councillor Allen?
Councillor Allen.
Okay, against?
Thank you. Councillor Barkham.
Or.
Councillor Coles.
I'm against.
Councillor Dowson.
For.
Councillor Lane.
Against.
Councillor Over.
Against.
Councillor Sanford.
I'm for.
Councillor Simons.
Against.
Councillor Yazin.
For, please.
Councillor Yergatini.
For, please.
And finally yourself, Chair, Councillor Aldrich.
I'm against because we ought to have a policy.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. The vote, therefore, is 5 in favour and 6 against. Therefore, that proposal is defeated. Chair, we will now have to move on to another proposal.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Yeah, so we need
for the temporary permission.
5 for and
against.
6 against.
Oh, 6, beg your pardon.
Yeah, so we need to now move on to another proposal, Chair.
I've already proposed that we accept officer's recommendation, I believe, Dan.
Thank you. And is there, there's a second as Councillor Over.
Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you, Chair. So I will now move on to the vote as per the officer recommendation for refusal. Members, if you again let me know whether you're for, against or abstain. Councillor Allen.
For.
Councillor Barkham.
Abstain.
Councillor Coles.
I'm for the proposal.
Councillor Dowson.
Abstain.
Councillor Lane.
For.
Councillor Over.
For.
Councillor Sanford.
Abstaining.
Thank you. Councillor Simons.
Yeah, for.
Councillor Yazin.
Abstain, please.
Councillor Yergatini.
Abstain.
Councillor Holdridge.
For.
Thank you, Chair and members. The proposal to go with officer recommendation for refusal, there was 6 for, none against and 5 abstain. Therefore, that proposal has passed.
Thank you. Thank you, members. I think it's been a good debate. I think that concludes the business for the night. And they're done.
Yep, that's it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, folks.